Hello, welcome to the Pirate Chronicles, episode 2.0. Today is March 7th, 2024. Once upon a time in the world of finance, a group of powerful, self-proclaimed wizards and witches, Satanists, decided to create a grand institution that would control the flow of money throughout the world. This magical institution was called the central bank, and it was born in 1668 when the Swedish Riksbank was established. Fast forward to 1910 when a secret meeting was held on Jekyll Island, where a group of powerful financial leaders, including J.P. Morgan, hatched a plan to create the Federal Reserve System. This system was designed to control the money supply and regulate the economy, much like a magical thermostat. Note, the Federal Reserve, or Fed, is not a U.S. government agency. It is a private corporation run by the Rothschilds, or at least it was. Rumors have it that things are changing, and it may be have been absorbed into Treasury, but we're waiting for confirmation. In 1912, the Titanic, a grand and luxurious ship, set sail on its maiden voyage. However, some conspiracy theorists believe that this was no ordinary voyage, but rather a secret mission to sink the ship and eliminate opposition to the creation of the Federal Reserve. According to these theorists, three wealthy leaders of the financial industry, John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidore Stratus, were aboard the Titanic and were opposed to the creation of the central bank. Curiously, J.P. Morgan decided at the last moment not to get on the Titanic. I'm still not even convinced it was the Titanic, but that is another episode. Um, while there's no concrete evidence to support this theory, it's an interesting tale that adds a bit of mystery to the history of the central bank. The Federal Reserve was ultimately created in 1913, and since then it has played a significant role in shaping the world's economy. In the past few years, the balance sheets of major central banks, such as the Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, and the Bank of Japan, have grown significantly. For example, since the pandemic start, these central banks have collectively added nearly $9 trillion to their balance sheets. This expansion has led to debates about the long-term effects on the economy and inflation. So as you can see, the story of the central bank is filled with intrigue, mystery, and a touch of magic. It's a tale that continues to unfold as the world of finance evolves. Are we evolving back to gold? In 1971, the United States made a significant change to its monetary policy by ending the gold standard, which had been in place since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. This decision meant that the U.S. dollar would no longer be directly convertible to gold, and it marked the beginning of the era of fiat currency. The gold standard was a system in which a country's currency was directly linked to a fixed amount of gold. This means that the value of a currency was determined by the value of the gold it represented. Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, the U.S. dollar was pegged to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce, and other currencies were pegged to the U.S. dollar. Boy, what would have happened if we were still on the gold standard at $2,100 an ounce? However, by the late 1960s, the U.S. was facing significant economic challenges, including high inflation and the growing trade deficit. In order to address these issues, President Richard Nixon announced a series of economic measures on August 15, 1971, which became known as the Nixon shock. Among these measures was the decision to end the gold standard and allow the US dollar to float freely against other currencies. Unfortunately, this gave the Fed tremendous control and resulted in printing lots of dollars, which caused inflation. The end of the gold standard has had a significant impact on the global economy as it allowed central banks to have more control over their currencies and monetary policies. It also led to a period of increased volatility in currency markets as exchange rates were no longer determined by the fixed value of gold. Some people called it the petrodollar. Overall, the decision to end the gold standard in 1971 marked a major turning point in the history of the US dollar and the global monetary system. It's certainly an interesting time for monetary policy, as the idea of returning to the gold standard has been tossed around quite a bit lately. In the past year, there have been discussions in the U.S. House of Representatives about a potential gold standard restoration act. Proponents of this idea argue that it would help to stabilize the value of the dollar and reduce inflation. However, critics of the gold standard point out that it could limit the government's ability to respond to economic crises and might lead to deflation. The U.S. has been off the gold standard since 1971, and it's not clear if there's enough political will to make such a significant change to the monetary system. Oh, there is. We got to do another story on BRICS. In the meantime, other countries like Russia have already made moves to establish a gold standard, and over 23 states in the U.S. have introduced bills to support a return to the gold standard. It's a fascinating time for global economics, and it remains to be seen if the U.S. will ultimately decide to follow suit. It seems that the idea of a Trump return to the gold standard has been making the rounds lately, especially with his potential comeback in the 2024 election, or sooner. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you that Trump has expressed interest in the gold standard before. Back in the day, the U.S. used to have a gold standard, which meant that the value of the dollar was tied to gold. But in 1971, President Nixon decided to end that relationship, and since then the U.S. has been using a fiat currency system. Some people believe that going back to the gold standard would make the economy more stable and prevent inflation. If Trump were to return to the White House in 2024, would he push for return to the gold standard? Oh, yes. He's done with the Federal Reserve. He's done with the central bank. And I believe we're going to be seeing the whole central bank system collapse worldwide. This is going to be great. It's hard to say for sure, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. After all, stranger things have happened in the world of politics. Have you heard of Nasera Jacera? These have been the Pirate Chronicles.